Welcome to Mekko Graphics product training. In this session, you'll learn how to create each of the key chart types using Mekko Graphics. I'm using Mekko Graphics for Windows for this demonstration. Let's start with the most popular chart type, the stack bar chart. This chart shows the wearables market over time by segment. It includes a growth line and a CAGR column. Let's create this chart. The first step in creating a chart is to insert a chart using Mekko Graphics into PowerPoint. Click on Mekko Graphics Chart. Do the drop down so I can see the options. These are quick launch charts, which are pre-formatted versions of the most popular chart types. It's available only in the Windows version. I'm going to click on Stack Bar with Growth. So you can see this already includes the growth line and the CAGR column. So the first step once you have the chart is to get your data into the Mekko Graphics data sheet. You have a couple of different options for doing that. For a simple chart, you could just type your data into the data sheet. Or you could copy your data from Excel and paste it into the data sheet. Another option is to create your chart directly from the Excel data. Now my chart has 4 bars, so I'm going to insert a column into the data sheet before I copy and paste my data from Excel. So it's ready to go. Copy it. Paste the data in. This last column in the data sheet is for the CAGR information. First thing I'm going to do is include the years for the CAGR. I don't need to include CAGR because that will automatically appear in the CAGR column. And you can see in the cell that the CAGR calculation is done in the Mekko Graphics data sheet. The formula is equal CAGR, first year, last year, number of years. So I need to edit that because I have another year. And then I'll just drag that down to populate that field for every series. Now let's format the chart. I'm going to adjust the margins just to make some room, just dragging the margin lines. I'll add a legend. If I double click on the legend, I can format it. I'm going to choose a position of align to CAGR, which makes it easier to see which series the CAGR data relates to. Now I'm going to click on Chart in the Mekko Graphics ribbon. And this brings up the most commonly used formatting options. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hide the X and Y axis. I'm going to link all the segments. I'm going to show all the labels, but I don't need the series name because that's in the legend. I want to show the value. If I click on the Values tab, I can format the numbers on this chart. First thing I want to do is convert the numbers from millions to billions. You can do that by choosing a data scale value of 3. This changes the way the data is displayed on the chart, but it doesn't alter the underlying data. Now if I click on the bar totals, hold down the Control key and click on segment values, I can format them together. I'm going to show 1 decimal place, a currency of dollars, a unit of billions. Now I'm going to format the growth line by clicking on it. So I'm going to choose, instead of an absolute growth line, I'm going to choose a CAGR growth line. So it's going to be calculated based on the values and the number of years shown in the bars. The last thing I need to do on this chart is to fix some of the small labels. I'm going to click on these three. I'm holding down the control key and I'm going to annotate them just to make it easier to read. Then I'm also going to click on the growth line, just drag it up a little bit to make room. And there's the chart. Let's do another stacked bar chart. This is one of the most common charts for financial statement analysis. This shows the changes over time by line item on an income statement, and it also includes margin data in the data rows. So let's create this chart. This time I'm going to go to Excel, and I'm going to create the chart directly from the Excel data. So you can see in Mekko Graphics for Windows, there's an Excel add-in. So if I click on Mekko Graphics Chart, and then I choose if I want to create the chart in Excel or PowerPoint, I'm going to choose PowerPoint, and I'm going to choose Stack Bar. And then I navigate to a blank slide and click to insert the chart. The green border around the chart indicates that the chart is linked to the Excel data and in sync with Excel data. If the border was red, the chart would be out of sync with the Excel data. Again, I'm going to adjust the margins. So I have the data, but now I need to determine how I want the data to appear in the chart. And to do that, we'll go to Bars and Series. So you'll notice in the Excel data that I brought in, there were a number of subtotals and header rows in the income statement data. So I need to deselect those so they do not appear in the stacked bar. So I can do that here. So it saves you some time. You don't have to clean up the data so much in Excel. You can just deselect the things that you do not want to appear on the chart. In this case, I'm going to, instead of showing net income as an item in the stack, I'm going to show it as a net line. I'll show you what a net line is on the chart. And then for the margin data, I don't want those to appear in the bar, but I do want them to appear as data rows. If I click on the Bars tab, this last bar is the CAGR column. So if I select CAGR in the table, it removes it from the chart. So the chart is starting to take shape. First thing I'll do is I'll add a legend. Again, I'll format it so it's aligned to the CAGR. And again, I'll go to Format Chart to start the formatting. So I'm going to again hide the X and Y axis. I want to show the net line values. That's the net income. I don't want to show the labels. Go to the Values tab. Again, I'm going to scale the data just to make it cleaner. You could leave it and show it in millions, but I'm going to show it in billions. I'm going to select bar totals and net line. Format them $, billions. And then I'm going to format the data rows to show as a percentage. You can also add a decimal place there. And that's your chart. Now let's move on to the Bar Mekko chart, which is an enhanced bar chart. It's a variable width bar chart. In this example, I'm showing the smartphone market for China. You can see the growth by competitor and the market share by competitor. So let's go to Excel. Just quickly, I want to show you why the marimekko is the right option for this chart. So I'm going to click Chart in Excel, and I'm just going to create this as a stacked bar in my Excel worksheet. This will just give me an idea about what the chart would look like. I can also leave any chart in Excel or move it back and forth between Excel and PowerPoint. In this case, I'm just using it to see, is the bar the right choice? If you presented the chart as a bar chart, I suspect that one of the first questions would be, how big is the all others category? Because it's the only category that's declining. So is it small or is it a large part of the market? So let's select the entire range, choose Chart in PowerPoint, and insert a marimekko. So here's the chart. First thing I notice is that market share is shown in the stacked bar. That's not what I want, so I'm going to right click on that segment, and under Show Series, I'm going to select Show Series as a data row only. So it's a best practice to show the data that's going to determine the bar widths in the data row to make it easier for the audience to understand the chart. So if I click on Chart, I can do the rest of the formatting. I'm going to hide the labels, hide the grand total. I'm going to use color by bars. Under values, I'm going to format the bar total, the y-axis, and the data rows, all as percentages. If I click on percentage, it'll show on the bar total. And then I also need to determine which row is going to be used for the bar width. I'm going to choose the market share. Now you can see the answer to that question I posed while we were looking at the Excel data. The all others category is declining. It's also a pretty significant portion of the market at 41% share. I'm going to sort this marimekko, the highest on the left, so we can look in order of growth. And then just for style purposes, I'm going to remove the ridge line, which is the border in this chart. Finally, I'm going to right click on the axis. I'm going to add in y-axis title, year-over-year sales growth. And that's the marimekko chart. The next chart is the marimekko chart. This is the sister chart to the marimekko, and the marimekko is a variable width 100% bar chart. Its most common use case is a market map. In this example, we're showing global wine exports by region and country. Go to Excel. Here's the data for this chart. You'll notice it's a long list of countries in alphabetical order, and the data for each country is in one of two columns, either Europe or the rest of the world. I'm going to select the entire data set. I'm going to choose marimekko, drop the chart into PowerPoint. First thing you'll notice is that there's way too much data for this chart. So we need to determine what we're going to show on the chart. So I'll go to bars and series. And under series, I could go through and just deselect series to show on the chart, but the data would not be accurate then. I want the grand total to actually represent the entire market. So instead, I'm going to group the small series into other. Just improves readability. So I'm going to click on the plus sign. I'm going to add a series called other. And I could manually select the values I want to include in that series, or I could calculate it. In this case, I looked at the data, it's roughly anything under 450,000. I'm going to include in other. Okay, so you can see that's a lot more manageable. And now you'll see that the chart shows that it's out of sync with the Excel data because I've added this other series. So I don't really need to retain the link, so I'm going to click on Link to Excel and remove it. So now I'm going to format this chart, and I'm going to move the margins just to make the chart a little bit bigger. Click on Chart. For the coloring mode, I'm going to choose by series after sort. I'm going to go to the Sort tab, and I'm going to sort. So I want each bar to be sorted with the biggest on the bottom. Okay, looks good. Go back to the General tab. I want to show the value and the calculated percentage for the labels. So let's go to the Values tab and we can start to format the numbers on this chart. One thing I want to do first is under Calculated Percentage. I would like the calculated percentage to be based on the grand total, not the bar total. So now you can see that France is 27% of the overall exports. That's just a personal preference depending on what you want to show. I'm also going to scale this data. It's in thousands, so I need to add a data scale value of 6 to go from thousands to billions. Now I can format the values. I'm going to select the grand total, the bar totals, and the segment values. $ billions. One other thing I want to do is I want to show the bar totals percentage so you can see that Europe is 71% of the global total. Need to add a y-axis title. Exported value in 2019. So now I'm going to color this chart. I'm going to color, I could color it by bars, but I would lose the differentiation of the segments within the bars. So I'll go back to by series after sort, but I'm going to pick a different palette. So I have a color palette that I've created that has shades, and it has 6 shades for each color. So that worked out perfectly because I have 6 series in each bar. So I chose that palette, and now the countries within Europe are all shades of blue, and the countries in the rest of the world are all shades of green. That's the Marimekko chart. Now I've mentioned palettes, so I want to show you how you use palettes and how you can use other features in Mekko Graphics to save time when you're creating charts. The first is the Preference Manager, and you can use the Preference Manager to create color palettes and also to set your default formats that you apply to all charts. The next is the Chart Gallery, and the last one are slide tools. So let me start with the Preference Manager. If you click on Mekko Graphics Charts and choose Preference Manager, here are the palettes. So my default palette that I'm using in this presentation is called Modern 7. It only has 7 colors, but I just showed you how I use this Modern 6 shades, which has a lot more shades for each color, which is useful when you're doing something like a Marimekko chart that has more series. So let me show you how to create a color palette. You can choose to create a palette from a PowerPoint file, so a theme or a PowerPoint presentation, which is what I'm going to do right here. So navigate to the file. I picked this organic theme from PowerPoint, and you can see the colors that are available. You select the colors that you'd like to appear, and then you can change the draw order. So if you want this one to be on top, you just move it within the draw order. You can do the same thing for lines, Gantt colors. Then you save the palette. You can use it in your presentations. I also want to point out that there are settings that are not color related, where you can choose how you want things to appear in your charts. So you can choose fonts, margins, font size in the Preference Manager. If you're getting charts from other people and you want to reuse them but update them to the colors that you've selected in the Preference Manager, always reset the colors first just to make sure to override any manual selections, and then choose Apply Preference Manager Settings to the chart to update the chart to your current settings. Let me show you the Chart Gallery. The Chart Gallery is an interesting way to save your favorite charts or slides so that you can easily reuse them. So you can access the gallery from the Mekko Graphics ribbon, and you can choose. This is a profile bar chart. You can choose to add it to the gallery. You can add the chart, the slide, or an active presentation. So you can store any charts or slides that you want, and you can insert them into future presentations and just replace the data. You can also use the chart gallery. If I click on view, you can see the gallery to get ideas for future charts. So you can search the gallery. Let's say I want to see charts that are about customer segmentation. You can search customer segmentation, and you'll see preloaded charts that relate to that type of analysis. You can get ideas for your own charts. You can also look for charts about a particular industry. I'm going to look at the beverage industry. See a bunch of charts about beer, craft liquor, wine. So that's the chart gallery. I also want to show you some of the tools that are available for when you're producing slides. So if you click under Tools, first thing I'll show you is how to use the Agenda Slide Creator. So you could create an agenda slide. You can update the items call it intro, customers, financials. You can change the formatting here. And then if you click agenda slide again, you'll automatically get the number of slides in your list, and you can just move these to the appropriate place in your presentation. You can also use the tools to create value chains or text boxes. So in this example, I have a waterfall chart at the bottom of the slide, and I added text boxes and a value chain to help explain the steps in the value chain. They're very simple to just add, 5 elements in a value chain. And then you can use the standard colors from your palette to recolor it. And you do the same for a text box or a header box. The other thing you can do is you can add Harvey balls. If you want to compare things on a qualitative basis, you can add different Harvey balls to your slide. So say if you had a table, you wanted to show some tasks were 3/4 complete, you could use a Harvey ball for that. Those are all available under the Mekko Graphics Tools section of the ribbon. And the chart gallery and slide tools are only available in the Windows version of Mekko Graphics. Let's move on to a couple of other chart types. This is a waterfall chart, sometimes known as a cascade. A waterfall or cascade because the bars waterfall off of the total bars until they reach another total bar. This chart shows job loss by sector between 3 different months. Let's create this chart. I'll insert a cascade chart. Go to Excel. I'm going to copy the data in Excel, paste it into the chart. And you can immediately notice that things are not how I want them to appear on the chart. So go to Bars and Series. Click on the Bars tab. So first I'm going to decide which bars are total bars. So the first bars are always a total bar, but I want the month bars, so in this case April and May, to be the only other total bars on the chart. So it's starting to take shape. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add an axis break. So I'm going to click on one of the total bars, right click and choose Insert Axis Break from the right click menu. Then I click on the axis break and I can change the size of it by dragging the dotted lines. If I right click again, I can choose how I want to format that axis break. I can choose the squiggly line or the diagonal. I like the diagonal. Again, I'll adjust the margins to make room. Now I'll format this chart. If I click on Chart, I'm going to hide the y-axis. Click on Values. I'm going to scale the values again. You don't have to do this, but I just like to make the chart as clean as possible. So I often scale the values. So if I click on the bar totals, I'm going to add a units. These are millions of jobs. So I'm going to add a unit, millions. Now I want to add the bar comparison lines. So I'm going to click on bar comparison. You'll see it automatically placed it between the first and the last bar. I'm going to move it. I'm just dragging it, and I'm going to add a second one. I'm going to drag that one so it shows. So you can see the difference between March and April to May. I can format the bar comparison line. I will show a value and the percentage. And for the value, it would be millions because it's millions of jobs. You do the same for the second one. So I'm going to make all the labels on this chart the same size by clicking in the white space of the chart, right-clicking, choosing Select All Labels. Then I hover over one label, right-click again. I'm going to choose everything is going to be 11-point font. You'll notice I've got a lot of problems down here that I can clean up. So if you just click on a particular label, you can in-place edit the label. So I'm going to add carriage returns to make this appear on multiple lines, so it takes up less space. I'm going to do the same for some of the other long labels. You can also just nudge the labels using the arrow keys. Okay, finally I'm going to color the bars. So I'll go to coloring mode and I'm going to choose by bars. Now I'm going to have to do some corrections. So I want all the total bars to be the same. So if I multi-select those and right-click, I can make them all the dark blue. So I'll recolor some of the other series. So in this trade and transportation, I want that to be orange, like it is in the first segment. And I also want healthcare to be red. So I'm just clicking on the bar and under segment, choosing the color. Then you'll see the other. I'll just choose the same color. I'll make the other series the blue. And there's your waterfall or cascade chart. Now let's talk about bubble and scatter charts. You can use a bubble chart when you have a fewer number of series and the size of the bubble adds some value to the chart. Use a scatter, which is very similar in terms of structure, when you have more data points and you're more interested in the relationship between the data points. So let me show you a bubble and a scatter, both with data relating to the smartphone market. Here's the bubble chart. This shows the growth in units sold, the cost per unit, and the total units sold by region. And you'll notice that the bubbles are grouped into two categories, emerging and developed markets. So let's create this chart. Drive it directly from the Excel data. Drop it into the PowerPoint slide. We'll adjust the margins a little bit. And we'll start formatting this. So I'll add a legend. That's where we have the emerging and developed market. I'll click on Axes in the Format section of the ribbon. So for the Y-axis, this is growth in units sold. And we show that as a percentage. The X-axis, this is cost per unit. And that's in dollars. And the reference bubble will include a title. It's units sold. and we'll include millions in the units. You'll notice that developed Asia, that bubble is a little bit of an outlier. I'm going to click on the x-axis and I'm going to right click and say insert axis break. And I'm going to size that. That's a little too big. My bubbles are still pretty close together, so I'm going to manually scale the axes. I'm going to change the max on the y-axis so it's 10%. On the x-axis, I'm going to start. None of the smartphones are priced at 0, so I'm going to set the minimum at 150. There you go. Start to see how the distribution of the bubbles improves. I'm going to format the chart. We'll click on Chart. On the General tab, we'll add quadrant lines. I'm going to add the values to this chart. Under Show Labels, I'll choose Show Values and Names. Then I can format the values. There are millions of units. And the last thing I can do is clean up the labels. I can leave them the way they are, or I can do some quick cleanup. So I'm going to do the same thing. If I say select all labels, right click on a label, choose 11. There's a couple that I can in place edit. This one, I'll remove some of the spacing. Same with this, I'll make it appear on multiple lines. And I can move it up into the bubble. I do the same with the others. I'll leave these outside the bubble. And there's your bubble chart. In this chart, I'm showing smartphone penetration by country. So it's the percent of adults who own a smartphone on the y-axis and the GDP on the x-axis. You can see the data structure is similar to the bubble chart. It just does not include the bubble size. This marker and regression grouping is used to facilitate the coloring of the chart and a legend for both the bubble and the scatter. Choose a scatter, which is under bubble. Drop it into the PowerPoint slide. Make some room here. Okay, so I'll add a legend. Click on Axes. I'll add the titles. This is percent of adults who own a smartphone. The x-axis is GDP per capita. And I'll add a currency on that, that's dollars. Let's format the chart. It looks like the only thing I really need to do, I'd like to add the quadrant lines, just so you can delineate, who's in the upper right quadrant. These are high income, high penetration countries. The upper left quadrant, these are countries with lower GDP, but high smartphone penetration. That's the scatter chart. I have one more chart type, we'll end with the Gantt chart. The Gantt chart is most commonly used to show a project timeline. So go to Mekko Graphics chart, and insert a Gantt chart. So the first thing we do is determine the time period for the chart. Let's say it's first quarter, so January 1st through March 31st. Okay, now we can start adding tasks into the Gantt chart. So I'm going to do this in phases. So I'm going to say requirements, and then I can add a subtask. Meet with stakeholders. Another subtask, draft presentation. Present findings. Make room. And do the next category. Project plan. Again, then I would click add a subtask. It's on the right click. Prepare SOW. Okay, I'll delete this. So that's the starting point. So here's the Gantt with all of the tasks and subtasks. Now I can add the timing. So I'm going to right click in this first subtask. I like to use bars, but you can use process or any of the other types, lines, brackets. And I'm going to add a milestone. Now I can add the rest of the tasks and milestones. So I have all the information in the Gantt. Now I can format the Gantt chart. So I'll click on Format. I can choose the colors. I'm going to make the header color the dark blue. I can choose the milestones. Let's make those green. If I go to the View tab, I can add grid lines or zebra shading, or both, just to make the different sections of the Gantt chart stand out. There's a whole host of formatting options available for Gantt charts. So there's the Gantt chart. I wanted to end by letting you know about some resources that are available on the Mekko Graphics website to help you learn how to use the different chart types. You can view the Power of Mekko charts, all about Cascade charts, mastering chart selections, or the presentations we created for strategy and finance professionals. You can watch recorded versions of previous webinars and short videos on how to use different features or how to create particular chart types. There's also presentations available. And there's a series of blogs that are available. The Chart of the Week blog will allow you to get some ideas that you can use in your presentations. The Build Your CQ blog is tips and tricks on how to use Mekko Graphics. Wanted to point out that you can use Ask an Expert and support to get your questions answered, and you can do that directly from Mekko Graphics software. So if you want to email support or choose Ask an Expert, you can submit a charting question and an expert will get back to you with their response.